Welcome, sleepy soul. I'm your storyteller tonight, here to help you drift into deep, peaceful sleep. Before we begin, don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more bedtime stories. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is. And if there's a story you'd like to hear next, I'd love to know that too. I was 17 when my mom met Marcus. It had been almost 3 years since Dad passed away in a car accident. The grief didn't just vanish. It shifted, settled like dust in the corners of our home, in my mom's quiet sighs at night, in the empty seat at the dining table. For the first year, she barely left her room. But by the third, she was starting to smile again. Not often, but enough that I noticed. That's when she met him. Marcus came into our lives one rainy Thursday evening. I still remember it vividly. I was sitting on the living room floor doing homework. Our shepherd mix Lucy curled at my feet, when I heard the front door open and laughter followed. My mom's laughter. It had been a while since I'd heard it sound like that, breezy, unburdened. "This is my daughter, Isla," she said, her hand resting gently on his arm. "Isla, this is Marcus. We met at work." He was tall, with sandy hair and a square jaw, dressed like someone who cared about first impressions. His handshake was firm, too firm, and his smile stretched a bit longer than necessary. "Pleasure to meet you," he said smoothly. I nodded. "Hi." He tried to make conversation, asking about school, my favorite subjects, music. He was charming, too charming. He laughed at everything I said, even when it wasn't funny. And something about the way he looked at me, like he was trying to memorize my face, made my skin crawl. Still, I kept quiet. Mom seemed happy. That's what I told myself. Maybe it was just me being protective, overreacting. But then he started showing up more and more. At first it was just dinners, then movie nights, then weekends. He brought gifts, a hoodie from my favorite band, a fancy sketchbook I'd mentioned wanting in passing. It felt intrusive, like he was trying to buy his way into my life. "Isn't he thoughtful?" Mom beamed. I forced a smile. "Yeah, totally." One night, a few weeks after he became a regular fixture in our house, I got up around midnight for a glass of water. The hallway was dark except for a faint light coming from the kitchen. I padded in, expecting Mom, but it was Marcus standing there silently staring out the window. "Oh, sorry," I said, startled. He turned slowly, as if he'd known I was coming. "Couldn't sleep," he murmured, voice low. I nodded, walking to the sink. I felt his eyes on me. "You should wear your hair down more often. It suits your face." I froze, the glass half filled. Thanks?" He smiled. That stretched, hollow smile. "You're growing up fast, Isla." The next morning, he acted like nothing had happened. I told myself again that I was being paranoid, that I was imagining things. But over time, the small things piled up. Lucy, our dog, barked at him constantly. She'd growl whenever he entered a room. Marcus pretended to laugh it off, but once I caught him kicking her under the table. "You okay?" I asked, bending down to pet her. "She's just moody," Marcus said, sipping his wine. "Some animals don't like men. Daddy issues, maybe." I looked at him. He winked. Later that night, Lucy wouldn't come out from under my bed. A month later, Mom sat me down at the kitchen table. Her hands were trembling as she set down her mug. Marcus stood behind her, his hand resting on her shoulder. "We have some news," she said, smiling nervously. "Marcus and I are getting married." My stomach dropped. "That's great," I lied. Liam, my cousin who had been staying with us since his parents moved overseas, walked in a few minutes later and actually congratulated them. I couldn't blame him. Marcus had a way of putting on a show when others were watching. Then came the rules. No locked doors, no phone in bed after 10, no hanging out with boys. "This is my house too now," Marcus said when I protested. "There are boundaries, Isla." "You're not my dad," I shot back. He smiled. But I am the man of the house now. The first time he touched me, it was subtle. A hand on the small of my back as I passed by, too low to be innocent. The next time, it lingered. You need to be more aware, he whispered in my ear when we were alone. You don't know what kind of attention you attract, I told Mom. She laughed. You're being dramatic, honey. Marcus would never. He loves us. He loved control. One evening, I overheard them arguing in the garage. I said no, Marcus. Mom's voice cracked. You don't get to tell me what to do with her, she's my daughter. You're too soft, he snapped. She walks around like a damn tease. A loud crash, a slammed door. When I went to check on her, she was crying silently in the laundry room, a bruise blooming across her cheekbone. That night, Liam and I planned to confront her again, but something didn't feel right. Marcus had gone out, supposedly for a work dinner. I waited until he left, then snuck into the guest room he sometimes used. I checked his closet. Inside a locked duffel bag, I found a wallet filled with IDs, all with different names and faces, credit cards with at least 5 aliases, a burner phone, and a gun. I took photos of everything. I need to show Mom, I whispered to Liam. Tomorrow, when we're all home. But the next day, Marcus came home early. I was in the driveway unlocking my bike when his car pulled up silently behind me. Did you go through my things, Isla? I froze. My heart stopped. He stepped out of the car, calm and collected. You're smarter than you look. I started backing away. He smiled. That same smile I'd come to fear. You know, I never liked you. Always watching me. Judging me. Then he pulled a knife from his coat. Let's go inside. Quietly. No. Wrong answer. He lunged. I screamed and tried to run, but he grabbed my backpack, yanking me to the ground. My knees scraped the pavement. Help! I screamed again, but the street was deserted. He kicked me in the ribs. I told your mom, he said between breaths. Told her you were trouble, but she didn't listen. I clawed at him, scratched his face. Bitch, he hissed. You don't get to win. He raised the knife. In the blur of adrenaline, I kicked upward, hitting his knee. He stumbled, and I grabbed the knife handle, fighting with every ounce of strength I had. I twisted. The blade sliced through his palm. He howled. I stabbed wildly once, then twice, until he collapsed, blood pouring from his chest. I backed away, hands trembling, chest heaving, staring at the man I'd just killed. The next hours were a blur of sirens, flashing lights, and questions. I told the police everything, showed them the IDs, the photos, the bruises on my mom's body. Marcus, if that was even his real name, had a record in multiple states under different aliases: fraud, assault, a warrant in Nevada, another in Colorado. He was a predator, a liar, a con man, and he almost got away with it. Mom never forgave herself. I should have seen it, she whispered one night. No, I told her. He hid it well. They always do. It's been 3 years. I still dream about that day sometimes. About the knife, the blood, the fear. But I'm healing. I tell my story now, not to relive it, but to help others see the signs. Because monsters don't always hide under beds. Sometimes they sit at your dinner table wearing a smile, and when your gut tells you something is wrong, listen. Always listen. In the quiet suburb of Ashcroft Hills, nothing really ever happened. I grew up there. My name's Ivy, and I guess I should start by saying I wasn't supposed to end up like this, numb, paranoid, and constantly looking over my shoulder. But I did, because the man my mother married, Daniel Fletcher, wasn't who he said he was. I was 17 the first time he stepped through our front door. Mom had been seeing him for months, but she waited until she was sure before introducing us. She met him at her job. She works as a night nurse at the county hospital, and he was a paramedic. Handsome, stable, mature, she gushed. I remember rolling my eyes and brushing her off like most teenagers would. My real dad left when I was 8 and never looked back, so I didn't exactly have the best model for fatherhood. But Daniel was charming. That's how monsters are, right? They smile with teeth. And he smiled a lot. The first dinner we had together, he brought me a book, an old tattered copy of To Kill a Mockingbird. I was stunned he even knew I liked reading. He leaned in and said, "Your mom talks about you all the time. I wanted to give you something you'd actually like." It worked. He had me. At first. We moved into his house 3 months later. A clean white 2-story in the quiet part of town. It felt too perfect. Like a dollhouse. He had this big kitchen with slate counters and matching stools. Everything was just still, untouched. He didn't even use half the rooms. Mom called it minimalism, but I always thought it felt sterile, lifeless. The first sign came slowly. It was small. I had a nightmare one night, not unusual. I'd been having them on and off for years. I got up for water and heard him in the living room. It was 2:17 a.m. He was just sitting there, in the dark. No TV, no phone. Just sitting. "Daniel?" I asked. He didn't answer for a few seconds, then, "You should be asleep." I froze. "I just needed water," I said, holding the glass like a shield. He smiled without showing his teeth. "We'll work on that. Sleep is important in this house." Things escalated in patterns like a storm gathering in the distance. He started installing cameras. First outside, then one in the hallway, then inside the kitchen. "Just for security," he said. Mom didn't question it. She was always tired, always working doubles. Then came the rules, the curfews, the phone checks, and the touches. Subtle things. A hand brushing too low on my back. A hug that lingered too long. A knock on the bathroom door even when I said I was in there. I tried to tell Mom once. We were sitting at the table, eating takeout. "Has Daniel ever made you feel weird?" I asked. She looked up. "Weird how?" "Like, I don't know. Like he watches me too much." She frowned. "He's just trying to be a good stepfather. It's an adjustment." I didn't bring it up again. Everything changed the night of the storm. It was mid-October. Wind howled like wolves outside, and the power cut around 9:45 p.m. Mom was on another double. It was just me and him. I was in my room with candles lit, reading. That's when the doorknob turned. I froze. "Ivy," Daniel said from the hallway. "Are you decent?" "What?" I asked, panicked. He opened the door anyway. I pulled the blanket up to my chest. "What are you doing?" He stepped in slowly, like a shadow made real. "You shouldn't be scared of me," he said, sitting on the edge of my bed. "I want to be alone," I said quickly. He smiled. "That's what your mother used to say too." My blood ran cold. "You know what she told me once," he continued. "That you're exactly like her. Same eyes, same attitude, same tight little—" "Get out!" I screamed. He didn't flinch. He leaned in, his breath hot. "Ivy, I've been patient. I've done everything for you. You're part of this house now, and this house has rules." I grabbed the lamp and swung it. It hit his shoulder hard enough that he shouted. I ran, down the stairs, out into the storm, barefoot. I ran to the neighbor's house, Mrs. Granger, and banged on her door until my hands went numb. She took one look at me, sobbing and drenched, and let me in. The cops came an hour later. Daniel was calm. Too calm. "She's had trouble adjusting," he told them, standing in the doorway like he wasn't soaked in menace. "Teenage girls can be dramatic." But I had bruises on my arm where he grabbed me. I had the camera footage from the hallway. He forgot to wipe it that night. And so, they arrested him. For suspicion of inappropriate conduct with a minor. That's all they could call it at the time. Mom was in shock. She didn't say a word to me that night. Not when the cops put him in cuffs. Not when I told her what he'd said. Not even when I showed her the footage. She just sat there, pale, hollow. She stayed with him, posted his bail, brought him home. I moved out 3 weeks later, into a friend's garage. Mom didn't call, not once, but Daniel did. He sent a letter, no return address, just a single page. You should have known. Once you enter my house, you don't leave. I'll see you soon. I gave it to the police. They said without a clear threat or signature, there was nothing they could do. 2 months later, someone broke into my friend's garage while I was out getting groceries. The lock was cut clean. Nothing stolen, but my clothes were scattered. The mirror in the bathroom had "You're mine" carved into the glass. He was watching. I couldn't prove it, but I knew. I moved again. New town, new name on some things. Changed my number. Got a cheap car and started working nights at a diner. Life moved forward. Sort of. But I couldn't shake the feeling. Like I was being followed. Watched. One night around 2 a.m., I left the diner and found a note under my windshield wiper. Rules are rules, Ivy. I vomited in the parking lot. I couldn't go to the police again. I had no proof, no address, no fingerprints, no Daniel. 2 years passed. I started to breathe again. Got my GED. Started therapy. Moved in with roommates. Then, just when I thought I could let it go, the phone rang. Unknown number. "Hi, Ivy," he said. My stomach dropped. "You didn't think I'd really let you go, did you?" I hung up and called the cops. This time they listened. An officer named Martinez had heard of Daniel Fletcher. Turns out I wasn't the only one. 3 reports, different towns, always just vague enough to avoid charges, always involving teenage girls, always gaslit into silence. They opened a file. 6 months ago, Daniel Fletcher was arrested in North Carolina. He'd broken into the home of a 17-year-old girl who looked a lot like me. Same eyes, same building. He was found hiding in her attic. He had rope, zip ties, a hunting knife, and a printed photo of me in his wallet. I'm telling this story now because people need to understand something. Predators don't always look like monsters. Sometimes they wear a uniform, smile kindly, bring you books. Sometimes they move into your house and call themselves dad, but they leave shadows behind them, in your mirror, in your chest. Even now, I still jump at shadows. Even now, I still check under my bed. Even now, I'm not sure if I'll ever feel safe again. But I survived. I survived. And that's something. I was 8 when my mom married Dan. She met him at the bank where she worked. He came in a few times a week, always polite, always asking for her line. "You have the best smile," he'd say, tapping the counter with his thick fingers. Back then, we lived in a small rental in Fairbridge, a town nobody's heard of in western Illinois. It was the kind of place where everybody knew your business, where secrets didn't stay buried for long. But some, I guess, still did. I remember the first time Dan came over for dinner. He brought a bouquet of gas station roses and a bag of Wendy's because he wasn't sure what kids liked. I'd been sitting at the kitchen table doing homework, and I didn't look up when Mom introduced us. I just heard the shift in her voice, the way it softened, stretched out like honey. "Be polite, Elsie," she'd said. "Say hi to Dan." He crouched beside me and smiled, too wide. His teeth were perfectly straight, unnaturally white, like they'd been bought rather than grown. "Hey there, kiddo," he said, and rested a hand on my shoulder just a little too long. I told myself it was nothing, just me being weird. He didn't move in right away. That took a few months. At first, it was just sleepovers, him leaving early in the morning before school. But then one day, he didn't leave. A few weeks later, they got married in a courthouse ceremony I wasn't invited to. By then, I had a bad feeling about him. Dan wasn't mean, not in any way you could explain. He never hit me, never yelled. In fact, He was always too nice, like someone pretending to be a person. He asked too many questions about school, wanted to know if I had a crush on anyone, if I wore a training bra yet, what kind of underwear I liked. I told my mom once. She brushed it off. He's just trying to bond with you, Elsie. You've got to give him a chance. He's trying. You're making this harder than it needs to be. I started keeping things to myself after that. The real trouble started when I turned 11. It was around then that I noticed things in my room being moved. My brush placed on the wrong side of the dresser. Socks I hadn't worn ending up in the laundry. My closet door cracked open when I always kept it shut. Once I woke up in the middle of the night and found my door ajar, just a sliver. But I knew I'd shut it. I always did. I told myself it was my imagination. I wanted it to be my imagination. Then one night I pretended to be asleep and kept one eye half open. Around 1:30 a.m., the doorknob turned. Slowly, quietly. It clicked, and the door creaked open. I didn't move. I barely breathed. A shadow stood in the doorway for a few seconds, then retreated. I heard soft footsteps padding back toward the kitchen, the fridge opening, a water bottle hissing as it was opened. I stayed awake the rest of the night. The next morning, Dan made me eggs and toast. "Rough night?" he asked, grinning. "You looked restless. Heard you tossing." Mom started working late shifts not long after that. Extra hours at the bank to cover some expenses. Dan and I would be alone most evenings. He'd make dinner, insist we watch a movie together. Always some old slasher flick or one of those teen horror shows where the girls screamed a lot. He'd sit too close on the couch, always with a blanket, always brushing against me just a little too much. I stopped eating dinner, stopped watching movies. I locked myself in my room and said I had homework. He'd knock sometimes, always soft. "Just checking in, Elsie. Want anything? You sure?" I never answered. Then he started coming into my room at night. It wasn't every night. Maybe once a week at first. Then more. I'd wake up to find him sitting at the foot of my bed, or standing near the window pretending to look outside. Once I woke up to find him kneeling beside me, watching me sleep. He didn't say anything, just smiled. Got up and left like nothing had happened. I told my mom again. I told her I woke up with him in my room, that he was scaring me. She looked tired, really tired. She rubbed her eyes and said, "He said he heard noises. Thought you had a nightmare. He was just checking on you." I screamed at her. "He's a pervert." She slapped me, the only time she ever had. After that, I shut up. That summer, I stayed at my friend Callie's house as much as I could. Her mom noticed something was wrong. "You don't talk much anymore," she said one morning while making pancakes. "Everything okay at home?" I almost told her. God, I wanted to tell her. But Dan had started doing this thing where he'd stare at me from across the room, just long enough. His mouth would twitch just barely. And once, when Mom wasn't around, he whispered, "You tell anyone, you'll end up in pieces, sweetheart." So I said, "Yeah, I'm fine." I turned 12 in October. That night Dan brought home a cake. Chocolate, my favorite. He sang. Mom took pictures. I smiled for them. Then they opened wine and started slow dancing in the kitchen, laughing like everything was normal. I went to my room and locked the door. At 2:13 a.m., the door handle jiggled. Then I heard the click. He'd gotten a key. I froze. My heart was pounding so hard I felt sick. I grabbed my phone and crawled into the closet, wedging myself behind boxes. The door opened. I could see through the cracks. Dan stood in the doorway, in just a t-shirt and pajama pants, barefoot. He whispered, "Elsie." I didn't move. I didn't even blink. He stood there for a while, then walked toward the bed, sat down, looked around the room. I texted Callie, "Help me, please, call someone." She replied instantly, "What's going on?" Then I heard Dan stand up. walked toward the closet. I pressed myself deeper into the corner. My fingers trembled so bad I dropped my phone. He reached for the handle. Then the sound of a knock from the front door shattered the silence. It was loud, insistent. Dan cursed under his breath and left the room. I heard his voice, angry, muffled. Then Callie's mom. She'd driven over. She said she was there to pick me up for an early breakfast surprise. She insisted, said my mom had agreed. I don't know how she pulled it off, but she saved me. I never went back to that house. The next day, Callie's mom called the police, Child Protective Services, everyone. They interviewed me for hours. I told them everything. At first, they didn't have proof, but they searched the house. They found a hidden camera behind a vent in my room. Dozens of files on Dan's hard drive, footage, screenshots, videos, not just of me. Other girls too. His niece, a neighbor's daughter. Dan was arrested that same week. My mom cried. A lot. She apologized over and over, but I didn't want to hear it. She said she didn't know. Maybe she didn't. But she ignored so many signs. She chose him over me. I lived with Callie's family for a year, then with an aunt across the state. I started therapy. I got older. Dan was sentenced to 165 years in prison. No parole. The judge called it one of the most disturbing cases of long-term predation they'd ever seen. People always say healing takes time, that it gets easier. But some nights, when it's quiet, I swear I can still hear that door creak open. I still feel eyes on me. I still dream about the night he whispered my name. I'm 21 now. I live alone in a different state. My locks are industrial, my windows double-bolted. I don't trust easily. I don't date. But I'm alive. I survived him. And when the nightmares come, when I wake up sweating, trembling, I tell myself the same thing over and over, like a prayer. He can't hurt me anymore. He can't hurt me anymore. He can't hurt me anymore. I still can't look at a McDonald's sign without feeling my stomach twist. It's not the food. It's not even the creepy old clown mascot. It's what happened during the year my mom married the wrong man. Let me start from the beginning. I was 13. My name is Eli Turner, and my mom had been raising me and my little sister Chloe, who was 7 at the time, all on her own since my dad died in a car crash when I was 2. We lived in Somerville, a quiet little town in Kentucky where everyone knows everyone, and secrets don't stay buried long. My mom, Rachel, worked as a dispatcher at a local cab company. She was the type of woman who never asked for help, who made grilled cheese for dinner even when she was dead tired, and who stayed up late checking our homework after working a 10-hour shift. She was my hero. Still is. Then came Jason. He started working the night shift at her company. Mom said he was quiet, polite, had lost his parents young, never married, no kids. They started dating after a few months, and honestly, I didn't think much of it at first. My mom deserved someone. But there was something about Jason that always made me feel off. I can't explain it better than this. When he smiled, it never reached his eyes. Like he was performing emotions, not feeling them. But my mom and Chloe adored him. He brought flowers. He watched Disney movies with Chloe. He fixed the squeaky cabinet in the kitchen. Still, I kept my distance. They got married in a simple backyard ceremony. A few folding chairs, dollar store decorations, some distant relatives, and a small cake. I didn't smile once in the photos. Not because I hated him, because I didn't trust him. And I was right not to. It started small. McDonald's. That was his idea of quality time. On his first weekend as our stepdad, Jason said, "How about I take you and Chloe out while your mom rests? We'll hit the mall, get some Happy Meals, just us." Mom looked so hopeful when I agreed. She gave me this look like, "Thank you for trying." So I went. He bought us toys from GameStop, let us play in the arcade. Chloe was laughing the whole time. Then came the McDonald's. We sat in a booth. He bought himself a Big Mac and 2 Happy Meals for us. He didn't eat like a normal person. He devoured that burger, like he was starving even though I saw him eat breakfast an hour earlier. And the way he looked at us while chewing, his eyes flicked between me and Chloe like he was feasting on us too. It was just one weird moment. But that's how monsters hide. In plain sight. From then on, it was always McDonald's. Breakfast? He'd bring us sausage biscuits. Lunch? Bacon cheeseburgers. Dinner? Fries and McNuggets. At first it was a joke. We laughed about it. Chloe even started calling him Burger Dad. But the joke died quick. We'd beg for pizza or Chinese or even home-cooked food. But Jason would always say, "Nah, let's stick with the good stuff. You kids love McDonald's, right?" He stopped taking us anywhere else. Even when Mom cooked, he'd show up with a bag of takeout and eat alone at the table. Those same wide eyes locked on us the whole time. I once caught him standing in the kitchen at 2 a.m., licking ketchup from his fingers, smiling in the dark. Then came the tantrums. One night, Mom suggested Thai food. Chloe was excited. I was relieved. But Jason lost it. "Thai? Are you kidding me? What's wrong with McDonald's? This is what families eat together. We're supposed to enjoy the same things." Mom tried to stay calm. "Jason, it's just food. Number. It's what this family used to enjoy, before you all turned on me." He stormed out, didn't come home for 2 days. When he came back, he looked like hell. Greasy hair, sunken eyes, twitching lips. He didn't speak a word, just plopped down at the kitchen table with a brown McDonald's bag and ate a Big Mac in total silence. Chloe cried that night. I sat by the bedroom door listening for movement. That weekend, everything changed. It was Saturday night. Mom was upstairs folding laundry. Chloe and I were in our room. We shared a bunk bed. She was on the bottom, I was on top. The room was dimly lit. Chloe was already asleep. Then I heard it. The door creaked open. At first I thought it was Mom checking in on us. But the figure that stepped into the room wasn't her. It was tall, wearing baggy yellow pants, bright red shoes, and a giant curly red wig. Ronald McDonald. My heart froze. The figure tiptoed toward Chloe's bed. I held my breath. I was too scared to move. Then I heard it. Soft, low, and guttural. "I'm loving it." He said it again. "I'm loving it." Suddenly he grabbed Chloe and started shaking her. "I'm loving it." She woke up screaming. I jumped down from the bed and hit the lamp switch. Light flooded the room. I saw his face. It was Jason, dressed as Ronald McDonald, face painted white, red lipstick smeared, yellow suspenders stretched over a stained shirt. But the worst part wasn't the costume. It was his eyes, wild, glassy, and completely detached from reality. "Let her go, you freak," I shouted. He didn't. He kept holding her, shouting the slogan over and over. Mom burst into the room seconds later. "What the hell are you doing?" Jason flinched, dropped Chloe, and backed away. Then, without a word, he sprinted across the room and jumped through the window. Glass shattered everywhere. He hit the ground outside hard. Blood streamed down his face from the cuts. But he stood up slowly, turned around, and grinned. His smile was wide, bloody, insane. How can you not love McDonald's? I'm definitely loving it. Then he ran, barefoot, bleeding, into the night, laughing like a maniac. The police came. Mom filed a restraining order. We moved 3 towns over. Jason was never found. He quit his job days before the incident, canceled his bank account, disconnected his phone. We never saw him again. It took Chloe 2 years of therapy to sleep without a nightlight. My mom never dated again. She carries guilt, even now, thinking she brought him into our lives. But it wasn't her fault. Some people hide who they are so well. It takes time for the cracks to show. Jason was one of them. Me? I haven't touched a McDonald's burger in over a decade. But sometimes I still see him in my dreams, standing at the foot of my bed, in that stupid yellow clown suit, whispering that same haunting phrase over and over again. I'm loving it. If you're reading this, Jason, I'm not a scared kid anymore. Come near my family again and I swear to God, I'll show you something you definitely won't love. I used to believe the scariest things in life wore masks or lurked in dark alleyways. Monsters, I thought, were loud and obvious. But when I was 14, I learned the truth. Monsters smile. They blend in. Sometimes they even eat dinner at your table. Let me take you back. I was born in a small town called Rivershade, the kind of place where people left their doors unlocked and waved to neighbors they didn't really like. My mom, Denise, had me when she was 17. She tried, at least at first, but she never grew up, not really. By the time I was 10, she'd been through a carousel of men, none of whom stuck around long enough to be called a father figure. The only stable presence in my early life was Grandma Lois, her mother. She raised me from the age of 6 until I was almost 15. And I mean raised me, braided my hair for school, taught me how to make stew from scratch, made me read the Bible on Sundays even if I didn't understand half of it. She was strict but safe, and that was more than enough. But when I turned 14, things changed. Grandma had a stroke. Not fatal, thank God, but enough to put her in a rehab facility. There was no one else to take me, so I was sent back to live with Mom and her new husband, Rick Dalton. He wasn't my biological anything, just Mom's third husband, a man she met working nights at a bowling alley. Rick was tall, broad-shouldered, and always wore this heavy cologne that smelled like pine trees and old pennies. He had a loud laugh and a louder temper. But when I first moved in, he played the part, asking how school was, telling Mom I was a good kid. They lived in a run-down duplex on the east side of Rivershade, 2 floors with creaky floors and windows that barely shut right. The upstairs was just ours. Downstairs, Rick's buddy lived. Chuck, a greasy, balding man who always looked at me a second too long. But Mom said he was harmless. That word would haunt me later. At first, I kept to myself. I stayed in my room, read books, listened to my scratched-up MP3 player, and avoided Chuck like the plague. But things got weirder as the weeks passed. It started with small things. I'd come out of the bathroom and find Chuck standing in the hallway. No reason to be there. He had his own place. One time I was grabbing cereal at 10 p.m. and caught him at the bottom of the stairs just staring up. "Evening, sweetheart," he'd say with this grin like he was chewing something sweet. I started locking my bedroom door at night. Rick noticed. "You think someone's gonna come in and rob your dreams, kid?" He joked, slapping the doorframe. "It just makes me feel safe," I replied. "You don't need locks in this house," he said, voice flat, serious now. "Not when I'm around." He was drinking more. I'd hear the clink of bottles, the slam of cupboard doors, and Mom's voice, high, pleading. Fights started happening more frequently. Things smashed. Apologies came like confetti the next morning. My saving grace during that time was my Aunt Maya. She wasn't really my aunt, just Mom's cousin. But she was young, loud, wild, in the best way. She had a cherry-red 1970 Chevy Nova that roared like a dragon, and she let me sit in the front seat like an adult. Maya lived 5 blocks down with her husband, Mike, and they had a finished basement he rented out. His younger brother, Travis, was crashing there. I'd seen him a few times, late 20s, shaggy blonde hair, thin as a stick, always in black jeans no matter the weather. He didn't talk much, but smiled a lot. I thought he was harmless too. I'd go to Maya's to escape. She let me hang around, bake cookies, watch old horror flicks, talk about boys I liked but never had the courage to say hi to. One evening after school, she wasn't home, but Mike said I could come in and wait. I was watching The Lost Boys in her living room when Travis came up from the basement. "You like vampires?" he asked, leaning against the archway. "Yeah," I shrugged, keeping my voice neutral. He didn't say anything else. Just watched the movie with me until Mike came back. I never thought much of it. Not then. A month later, it happened. The night I still dream about. Mom had left for her night shift at the hospital. Rick said he'd be out with Chuck. I was alone, finally, and I loved those rare moments of peace. I made microwave popcorn, curled up in front of the tiny living room TV, and started watching The Sixth Sense. Around 11:30 p.m., someone knocked. I froze. The door had a painted-over glass panel at the top, but someone had scratched out a small peephole. I stood on my toes and looked. Travis. I opened it a crack. Hey? Hey, is your mom or Rick home? He asked casually. Number she's at work. Oh, Rick said he'd be here. Mind if I wait inside a few minutes? I paused. He was family, kind of. I didn't want to be rude. I guess, I said, unlocking the door. He stepped in. His shoes were muddy. Sorry, didn't mean to bother you. Just needed to talk to Rick about something important. He lingered in the hallway. Then his tone changed. You busy tonight? Just watching a movie. You should come outside for a second. There's someone I want you to meet. Who? Just a buddy of mine. He's got a question about your stepdad. He's out front in the car. Something in his voice turned wrong. Polite, but too smooth. Too forced. I don't have shoes on, I lied. That's okay, he said, smiling. Just stand in front of the headlights. He just wants to see who he's talking to. My stomach flipped. Why would I need to stand in the lights? I backed up a step. You can ask me here. He moved closer. His finger brushed my shoulder, adjusting my tank top strap. You're so jumpy. You're safe with me, you know that. I laughed nervously. I know, I'm in pajamas. It's cold. Come on. Just a minute, he said again, his hand now hovering behind me like he wanted to guide me toward the stairs. Then I saw it. A man in the passenger seat, window down, smoke curling from a cigarette. It was Chuck. My whole body lit up with alarm. I'm not really supposed to leave the house at night, I said, faking a dumb giggle. Mom would kill me. He looked at me for a long second. You scared of us? He asked. No, I chirped, voice cracking. Just being careful. There was a long pause. Then he nodded, turned toward the door like he was leaving, and lunged for the lock. I slammed it shut, turned the deadbolt, and stumbled back. My heart was thudding like a war drum. I heard voices outside. Two. Chuck and Travis. Then knocking. Hey, Chuck said from outside. We just want to talk to Rick. He's not here, I yelled through the door. Silence. Then another knock. Travis this time. I'm sorry if we scared you, sweetheart. I didn't mean to upset you. His voice was syrupy. It's okay, I should wait for my mom, I replied, trying to sound casual. Then I made a mistake. I turned toward the back door. And thank God I looked out the kitchen window first, because there was a shadow standing still at the back. Chuck, waiting. Travis was in front, Chuck was in back. I was trapped. I stood frozen. Every part of me screamed, call the police, but I didn't move. I didn't even have a phone. Mom had taken it after a fight about my grades. I went back to the front. Travis was still outside. I pressed my face to the peephole. He looked up at me and smiled. I'm leaving, I said, voice trembling. Where you going, sweetie? To Maya's. She's expecting me. That was a lie. But it gave me a plan. I crept to the hallway closet, pulled on old sneakers with the laces still tied, and snuck into Mom's room. She had a window that led to the small ledge above the garage. I popped the screen, shimmied out, and dropped down into the side yard. I ran barefoot down the alley behind our place. Gravel bit into my feet, but I didn't stop. I ran the 5 blocks to Maya's house and banged on her door. She opened it in a robe, eyes wide. Jesus, what happened? I collapsed into her arms. I never told her the full story. I just said I felt unsafe. She believed me. She always did. When I told my mom, she waved it off, said I was reading into things. But 3 weeks later, I was moved into my dad's place 40 miles away in Springbrook. I never saw Chuck again. Travis moved out shortly after. Sometimes I wonder what they would have done if I'd stepped into the headlights. But I didn't. And that saved me. I don't need horror movies anymore. I lived one. And the scariest thing, they didn't wear masks. They wore smiles. It was the third week of October when everything started to change. I was 8 years old, living in the quiet town of Millstone Ridge, tucked away behind a long stretch of cornfields and broken 2-lane roads. My name's Leah, and at the time, my life was defined by 2 things: the long hours my parents worked, and the after-school program I stayed in because of it. My mom was a nurse on the night shift, pulling 12-hour days at Millstone County Hospital. My stepdad, Ron, worked construction, always coming home late, smelling of sawdust and sweat, rarely saying much beyond a grunt or a half-hearted question about dinner. My real dad? I barely remembered him. He left before I turned 4. The only image of him I had was a creased photo tucked in the back of my jewelry box. The man in it looked kind, smiling with his arm around me as a baby. But it felt like a distant memory, like trying to recall a dream you woke up from years ago. Ron came into our lives when I was 6. At first, he seemed okay. My mom smiled more when he was around, and he bought me a purple bike with glittery streamers the first month he moved in. But over time, something in him changed. Or maybe I was too young to notice before. He was strict, not just firm, but cruel in small, subtle ways. He'd grip my arm too tight if I didn't say, "Yes, sir," or snap at me for using too much peanut butter on a sandwich. He didn't like when I made noise, said it hurt his head. And his eyes, there was something always watching, always calculating in them. But this story isn't just about Ron. It's about something that happened one afternoon after school. Something I'll never forget. Our after-school program took place in the cafeteria of Millstone Elementary. It wasn't anything fancy. We sat at sticky plastic tables, did our homework, played board games, and waited. Pickup usually happened around 5 p.m., but a few of us, kids with parents working long shifts, stayed even later. We called ourselves the last crew. There were usually 3 or 4 of us, waiting with a teacher or aide until our parents arrived. But on that day, it was just me. Mrs. Holloway, the usual chaperone, had been replaced by Mr. Thompson, a tall, tired man in his late 50s who smelled like coffee and wore mismatched socks. He was nice enough. We didn't talk much. He let me sit against the wall near the double doors with my backpack, my science book on my lap, and my lunchbox still half full beside me. It was 6:12 p.m. when Mr. Thompson stood up suddenly and said, "Leah, sweetheart, I've got to run to the restroom real quick. I'll be back in 2 minutes. Tops, don't move, okay?" I nodded. Okay. I watched him disappear around the corner, his shoes squeaking slightly against the tile floor. The world grew quiet. The sun had dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the parking lot. Only one dim street lamp lit the pickup zone now, flickering like it had a loose wire. Then I heard the car, a soft, low hum as it pulled up to the curb just beyond the gate. I didn't recognize the vehicle, an old silver sedan, slightly rusted along the edges. The passenger window rolled down with a low, whirring sound. Inside was a man with a thick black beard, wearing a red flannel shirt and dark sunglasses, even though it was nearly night. "Leah," he called out. I looked up, heart immediately racing. "Come on, let's go. Your dad couldn't make it. I'm your uncle. He sent me." I froze. My hands gripped the straps of my backpack, knuckles white. My throat tightened. Uncle? I didn't have an uncle. Not one I'd ever met. Still, something in his tone, not angry, but urgent, made me second-guess myself. He opened the door. "Get in the car, Leah. Your dad got hurt. We need to go see him. Now hurry." My stomach dropped. The voice was louder now, sharper. I looked toward the school doors, hoping Mr. Thompson would come back. The hallway was empty. "Leah." The man's voice turned cold. "Don't make me get out. We don't have time." My legs felt heavy. My mind screamed at me to run, but my body wouldn't move. It was like being caught in a nightmare, the kind where your voice doesn't work. Then, like a burst of lightning, the school doors flung open. "Hey!" Mr. Thompson's voice echoed. The man in the car slammed the door and sped off, tires screeching as he disappeared down the road. Mr. Thompson rushed to me, kneeling. "Are you okay? What happened? Who was that?" I couldn't speak right away. My whole body was trembling. "He said he was my uncle," I whispered. Mr. Thompson's face darkened. He looked toward the end of the street, but the car was long gone. That night, the school called my mom and stepdad. I could tell Ron wasn't happy. Not about what happened, but about the fact that people would be asking questions. He muttered under his breath the whole ride home, knuckles tight on the steering wheel. The next few days were strange. The school increased security. More staff were assigned for pickup duty. They asked every student to write down the names of people who were allowed to pick them up. My mom listed herself. That was it. But I noticed something else. Ron started acting different. One morning I found him in the kitchen early, something that never happened. He was staring at his phone, the screen black, just staring. He flinched when he noticed me watching. "Go get ready for school," he said. Another time, I walked into the garage by accident and saw him packing a box full of tools into the trunk of his car, mumbling to himself. The box had a roll of duct tape and an old hunting knife sitting on top. He slammed the trunk shut as soon as he saw me. "You don't need to be snooping around out here." I wasn't, I mumbled, backing away. At night, I started hearing whispers through the thin walls of our trailer. My mom and Ron arguing in hushed tones, words like dangerous and not again, and they'll find out. One night, I crept out of bed and pressed my ear against the bedroom door. "She was almost taken, Ron," my mom hissed. "Don't you care?" "You're overreacting," he snapped. "You know damn well I'm not." Silence. Then Ron's voice, low and threatening. "You say one more word, and I'll remind you who's in charge of this house." The truth unraveled slowly. A week later, when my mom picked me up alone, she was shaking. Her hands on the steering wheel trembled so bad we had to pull over. She told me everything. The man in the car wasn't random. He wasn't a stranger. He was Ron's brother, a man who had been arrested years ago for attempting to abduct a girl from his neighborhood. He was released on parole 6 months earlier and had apparently gotten back in touch with Ron. My mom had no idea. Ron never told her he had a brother. She found out after the school incident when she dug through his things and discovered letters, handwritten ones from a prison in Ohio. Letters that talked about the plan and testing the girl's instincts. I felt sick. My knees buckled in the passenger seat and I cried until I couldn't breathe. My mom held me tight, rocking me in the car like I was a baby again. We didn't go home that night. She drove us straight to her sister's place in another town, called the police the next morning. Ron was gone by the time they arrived. So was his car, his clothes, everything. It was like he vanished. They never found him. Now I'm older. I still check over my shoulder when I walk home. I still avoid flannel shirts and rusted sedans. I never sit near school pickup zones without scanning every car that drives past. And I still wonder, if Mr. Thompson had been 1 minute later, where would I be? Dead? Missing? Somewhere far from Millstone Ridge? All because a man I was forced to call Dad let a monster get too close to me. Some people say, stranger danger is just a thing you teach little kids, something they'll grow out of. But the truth is, sometimes it's not the strangers you should fear the most. It's the ones who already know your name. I was 16 the summer my stepfather's brother passed away. His name was George Reynolds, and I remember him as quiet, polite, and always impeccably dressed. To everyone in the family, George was the calm one, the kind uncle who brought thoughtful gifts to holidays, never raised his voice, and always gave me and my little sister polite smiles without ever lingering too long in conversation. He lived alone in a modest 2-story house on the outskirts of a town called Garnett, about an hour's drive from where we lived in Emporia, Kansas. I hadn't seen much of George in the years leading up to his death. He was the kind of relative you saw at weddings, funerals, and the occasional Christmas dinner. The call came on a Monday morning. My mom answered the phone, and I could tell something was wrong by the way she lowered her voice and turned her back toward the hallway. I stepped into the kitchen, pretending to look for cereal, but I was listening. After she hung up, she looked at me and said quietly, "George passed away. Heart attack, in his sleep." I blinked. "Oh, wow. He didn't have anyone else," she added. "No wife, no kids, just us." It wasn't a surprise that my stepdad Thomas offered to handle his brother's estate. George had always been meticulous, so no one expected it would be more than a day or two of sorting papers, boxing things up for charity, and handing the keys back to the bank. He had no outstanding debts, no hidden drama. That's what we all thought. That Friday, Thomas asked if I wanted to come help. I wasn't thrilled. It was the first week of summer break, and I'd been looking forward to sleeping in. But my mom gave me a look that said go. So I did. We left around 10 in the morning. The drive was quiet for the most part. Thomas wasn't the chattiest man on the best of days, but he looked more somber than usual. "You were close with him?" I asked after a while. He nodded, eyes on the road. "When we were younger, yeah. Shared a room until I was 12. George was always neat, private, but we got along. I guess I just didn't see much of him after he got that job in Topeka. He was an accountant, right?" "Yeah, a good one." When we pulled into the gravel driveway of George's house, I felt a strange knot in my stomach. I couldn't explain it. The house itself was charming, old but well kept. White siding, green shutters, and a narrow porch with a single rocking chair still swaying slightly in the breeze, as if someone had just been sitting there. Thomas unlocked the door and we stepped inside. The house smelled like cedar and lemon cleaner. Everything was spotless. A calendar on the fridge was still turned to June, with his neat handwriting marking doctor appointments and grocery trips. Nothing suspicious, nothing odd. The whole place was too clean. I remember thinking that. We started in the kitchen, boxing up dishes and Tupperware. After a few hours, we moved to the living room. Framed photos lined the mantel, mostly landscapes, no people. There were no baby pictures, no wedding portraits. George had been married once, briefly, but his wife had passed away long before I was born. "Cancer," my mom had said. Thomas dusted off an old leather-bound photo album and flipped it open. Every page was empty. I looked at him. "He didn't take pictures of anyone?" "He didn't show pictures to anyone," Thomas said softly. "That's different." We moved upstairs and worked in silence for a while. Each bedroom was nearly identical. White sheets, no clutter, plain wooden furniture, no hidden journals, no letters. And then there was the attic. We didn't even notice the pull-down ladder at first. It was in the hallway ceiling, barely visible unless you stood directly underneath it. A small square with a brass ring for a handle. When I reached up to tug it, Thomas stopped me. "We'll leave that for last." I nodded. We kept working, but my mind stayed on the attic. That strange square in the ceiling felt like it was watching us, waiting. It was almost dusk by the time we finally pulled the ladder down. It creaked like something ancient, and a puff of dust hit my face as I climbed up first. I expected boxes, maybe old holiday decorations or tax records. What I didn't expect was near emptiness, just 2 medium-sized cardboard boxes in the far corner, perfectly aligned like soldiers at attention. "Nothing up here," I called down. "Check the boxes," Thomas said. I stepped over slowly, suddenly aware of how quiet the attic was. My heartbeat seemed to echo off the low wooden beams. I bent down, brushed the dust off the first box, and opened it. Photographs. Hundreds of them. They were glossy, aged, and cold to the touch. At first, I didn't process what I was looking at. Just faces, blurry shots, poor lighting. But the more I sifted through them, the clearer it became. The women didn't know they were being photographed. Some were clearly taken from a distance, through windows, around corners, from behind fences. Others were disturbingly close. One woman was brushing her hair in front of a mirror. Another was washing dishes in her kitchen. A third was lying on her couch in a robe, eyes closed. There were no captions, no explanations, just stacks and stacks of these moments, intimate, stolen, wrong. My hands started shaking. I opened the second box. More of the same. But then I found something worse. One of the women in the photos was familiar. Too familiar. It was my stepdad's late wife, George's ex-sister-in-law. She looked younger in the pictures, maybe early 30s. In some, she was laughing with friends at a picnic. In others, she was sitting alone at a cafe reading a book. And in one photo, she was standing in front of her bathroom mirror, completely naked, brushing her teeth. I dropped the photo like it burned me. "Thomas," I called, voice tight. "You need to come up here." He climbed the ladder slowly. When he reached the top, I handed him the box without a word. His eyes flicked through the photos. At first, confusion, then horror. "What the hell is this?" he whispered. "You tell me." I don't know. I've never seen these before." He sank down onto the floor. For a long time, we sat in silence. Then he stood, picked up both boxes, and carried them downstairs. "Don't say anything to your mother," he told me. "But Thomas, not yet. Please." We drove home that night without a word. We never spoke of it again. He locked the boxes in his study. A few weeks later, I noticed they were gone. I never asked what he did with them. I tried to look up the other two women just to see if they were okay. It took me a few tries, but I eventually found one of them. Her name was Rachel, and she lived in Missouri. I didn't message her. What was I supposed to say? "Hey, my dead uncle may have stalked you for years." The more I thought about it, the more I wondered how George had taken those pictures. Did he break into houses? Use long lenses from a car, or did someone else take them for him? Sometimes I think about the rocking chair on his porch, still swaying as we arrived, like someone had just been there, watching. Sometimes I wonder if he ever watched me. I loved my Uncle George. I really did. And I want to believe he was a good man. But I can't unsee what I saw. I can't unknow it. And now, every time I'm alone, I close the blinds, just in case someone's watching. I still remember the first time I met him. It was a cold spring in Petrovsk, a small city in northern Russia where the snow stubbornly clung to the sidewalks like it didn't know when to leave. I was 17 and coming home from school, tired, numb-fingered, and annoyed at everything. Exams were coming up. My sister kept stealing my headphones, and my mother had been acting strangely cheerful for weeks. That day, I found out why. There he was in our kitchen, smiling like he belonged. My mother, Natalia, looked giddy, like a teenager in love. She introduced him as Victor, her dear friend from work. He stood up, extended his hand, and said in a voice too smooth to trust, "Nice to finally meet you, Dima." I shook his hand but didn't say much. Something about him made my stomach tighten. It wasn't the way he smiled, it was how long he held it, like a mask, frozen. Let me back up. My father died in a car crash when I was 10. A semi-truck hit black ice and slid into his lane. The police said he probably died on impact. After that, it was just my mother, my younger sister Katya, and me. Life wasn't easy, but we managed. My mom worked 2 jobs, one at a furniture warehouse, the other as a nighttime cleaner at a medical clinic. I worked part-time in a bakery after school to help cover groceries, and Katya, even at 13, helped with chores. We were close. At least, we were before Victor came into our lives. At first, he seemed like a decent guy. He brought flowers for my mother, chocolate for Katya, even shook my hand like a man trying to earn respect. But there was something performative about it, like he was playing a role he'd studied well. 2 weeks in, he was spending nights at our apartment. A month in, his clothes had moved in. 2 months later, he proposed. I didn't trust him. I caught him going through my mom's purse once. He pretended he was looking for her glasses. Another time, I found my gaming console missing. He claimed he didn't touch it, but I overheard him talking on the phone in the hallway, whispering, "I got a few things I can sell." I told my mom. She brushed it off. "You're being paranoid," she said. "He's trying to help us. You just don't want to see me happy." I wanted to scream, but I said nothing. Then came the wedding. A small courthouse deal. I didn't go. Katya didn't want to either, but our mom made her. Afterward, we had cake in our kitchen. Victor gave a toast. His hand gripped my mom's shoulder so tightly her smile flickered for half a second. That was the first crack. Things changed quickly after that. Victor quit his job, saying he was going to start his own business. He spent his days pacing the living room, chain smoking and swearing at his phone. Rent started falling behind. He convinced my mother to take a loan from the bank to invest in opportunities. Within weeks, the money vanished. Then he started getting angry. At little things. The kettle not boiling fast enough. Katya leaving a towel on the floor. Me not saying hello the moment I walked in. His anger was quiet, never explosive, but sharp. It cut through the room like a knife in cold air. One night I came home to find my mom crying in the bathroom. Her lip was split. "He didn't mean it," she said. "He just had a bad day." The next day, I skipped school and went to the police. They asked if she had filed a report. She hadn't. I begged her to. She refused. "We can't afford this," she said. "He'll leave and take everything. He says he'll hurt himself if I try to leave." I stared at her, realizing for the first time that love could make someone blind. Winter came early that year. Victor's business failed. We had no money, no heat. He borrowed from loan sharks. Our landlord issued an eviction notice. Mom was always tired, always quiet. Katya stopped singing. I stopped caring about grades. Then, just before Christmas, we were kicked out. We lived in a shelter outside the city. 1 room, 4 mattresses, mold on the windows, rats under the floorboards. My mother cried every night. Victor did nothing but complain about how we ruined his life. He blamed Katya for spending too much on school clothes. He blamed me for never respecting him. He blamed my mother for turning him into this. But he never blamed himself. It got worse. He started disappearing for days, then returning with bloodshot eyes and shaking hands. I saw the signs. Drugs. My mother knew too. But she clung to him like he was the last plank on a sinking ship. Then came the night I still dream about. Katya and I had walked to the store to buy some bread and soup. When we came back to the shelter, the door was broken. Inside, our mother was on the floor. Her nose was bleeding. Her arm was bent wrong. Victor stood over her, screaming nonsense. He didn't even notice us come in. I rushed at him, punched him as hard as I could. He staggered, shocked. I grabbed Katya, grabbed our mom, and ran out into the snow. We stayed at the hospital that night. The social worker got involved. Victor fled. For 2 months, we lived in a women's center in Karelia, a rural part of northwest Russia. No men allowed, just mothers and children with tired eyes. I started working full-time at a metal shop. Katya went back to school. My mother started therapy. But Victor wasn't done. He found us. He started leaving threats. He wrote, "You'll pay," on our old apartment door. The police said without a restraining order they couldn't do much. Then one night, while walking home from my shift, I saw a car parked across the street. Lights off, engine running. I knew it was him. I took a picture, gave it to the police. They still did nothing. That's when I decided to fight back. I called Igor, a friend from school whose uncle was an ex-police investigator. He introduced me to a private detective named Sergey. Sergey was old school. Scar across the cheek. Cold eyes. But he listened. And he helped. He put a tracker on Victor's car, monitored his movements, planted a hidden camera at the shelter. One night, Victor tried breaking in. We got it on tape. The police arrested him the next morning. Turns out he had violated parole from a previous assault charge years ago. That, plus the drugs and breaking and entering, gave them enough to hold him. He screamed as they dragged him out. "You're dead, all of you." But that was the last time I saw him. He was sentenced to 12 years. We moved back to the city with help from a support program. My mother got a desk job at a health clinic. Katya finished school and went on to study psychology. To help girls like us, she says. I started my own repair business with 2 friends. We fix heating systems, stoves, and wiring. We make good money in winter. We bought a small house in the hills outside Petrovsk. It's quiet. Safe. Ours. Sometimes I still wake up sweating, hearing his voice in my head. But it's fading now. Because the frost beneath us may have cracked, may have threatened to swallow us whole. But we endured. We walked through the cold. And we survived. I was 10 years old when I first got the sense that something wasn't right with my stepfather, Rick. But this story isn't just about him. It's about a morning that could have ended my life, and how a mix of bad luck and mother's instinct might have been the only reason I'm still here to tell it. We lived in a quiet neighborhood in Fairgrove, a small town in northern Michigan. You could drive through it in 10 minutes, pass a bakery, a church, a rundown gas station, and then you were back in the woods. My mom, Paula, had married Rick the previous year after dating him for 6 months. He worked maintenance at a lumber yard. I never knew my biological father. Mom said he left before I was born. Rick was the first real dad figure in my life, but I always felt a strange weight around him. He wasn't cruel exactly, but cold. Like a locked door I wasn't allowed to open. I went to Fairgrove Elementary, a red brick building tucked behind a soccer field, and every morning I caught bus 17 at the corner by the pine trees. My bus driver, Mr. Halpern, was a gruff but nice old man who had driven the same route for over 20 years. He always honked twice and waited exactly 30 seconds if you were late. This morning, that morning, started like 100 others. But now that I look back, every detail sticks out like a neon sign. I was still in bed when Mom burst through my door, hair frizzy, her shirt half buttoned. "Dylan, get up, we overslept." I blinked at the clock, 6:31. My bus usually came at 6:55. "Shoot," I muttered, kicking off the blanket. "I'll make you toast. Just get dressed fast." Mom rushed off down the hallway, but I didn't get dressed. I moved slow. Maybe out of sleepiness, maybe because I didn't care about being late. I figured Mom would just drive me. Rick wasn't up yet. He worked second shift, so he usually slept in, but that morning his door was slightly ajar. I remember thinking it was odd. Rick hated it when his door wasn't fully closed. Mom popped her head back in. "Forget it, I'll drive you. No way you'll make the bus, just eat first." I padded down to the kitchen in my pajamas, sat at the table, and started nibbling at buttered toast while Mom poured herself a coffee. The house was quiet except for the clink of her spoon against the mug, a soft rumble outside, then headlights through the foggy kitchen window. "The hell?" Mom muttered, squinting. "That's early." I followed her to the front door. A yellow school bus idled at the curb. It was bus 17, but it wasn't Mr. Halpern. A man I'd never seen before was sitting in the driver's seat. Mid-40s, dark sunglasses even though the sun hadn't fully come up. His build was bulky, like he worked out, or was trying too hard to look like he did. He didn't wave. "Stay inside," Mom said firmly and stepped out onto the porch. I watched through the screen door. She crossed her arms and waved the bus on, but it didn't move. After a few seconds, the door of the bus hissed open. The man stepped down, clipboard in hand. From my angle, I could see he was wearing a standard school bus uniform, blue button-up shirt, black slacks, but something about the way he walked made me uneasy. Too stiff, too staged. Mom folded her arms tighter as he approached. "Morning, ma'am," he said, voice deep and smooth like a radio host. "I'm filling in today." Mike Halpern called out. "First day on this route. Just wanted to make sure your boy didn't miss his stop." Mom tilted her head. "We're running late. I'll take him myself today." The man smiled, too wide. "That's fine. I can wait a couple minutes. Got a bit of a buffer today?" "No thanks," Mom said more sharply. "We'll handle it. Appreciate you coming by." The man's smile faltered. For half a second I saw something flash across his face, something dark, angry, but he nodded, turned, and climbed back on the bus. Mom came back in and locked the door behind her. Her hands were shaking. "Did something feel off?" I asked. She didn't answer me, just muttered, "Finish your toast." I had just gotten halfway through dressing when I heard another engine. This one felt familiar. The sharp double honk that always made my dog bark. Mom ran to the window. I followed. It was Mr. Halpern. She bolted outside without shoes. I stood frozen in the hallway. A few seconds later, she came back in, pale as snow. "Get dressed, fast." "What? Why?" "That wasn't a substitute driver," she said, her voice a rasp. "Mr. Halpern never called in. No one did." My chest tightened. "Then who?" "I don't know. But he wasn't from the school. Mr. Halpern just called dispatch. They didn't send anyone." Mom kept me home that day. The police came around noon. A female officer talked to me in the living room while another officer reviewed security footage from the only neighbor with a working camera. The footage caught the fake bus pulling up, but the plates were too blurry to read. They never saw him get out. Just the bus pulling away after Mom went back inside. The detective asked if I remembered any details, stickers, markings, logos. But the bus looked exactly like mine. Same faded number 17 on the side. Same green frog toy dangling from the rear view that Mr. Halpern had added last spring. I told them about the sunglasses, the clipboard, the way he spoke. I even remembered he had something in his back pocket, a rolled-up magazine or a map. Nothing ever came of it. No arrests. No follow-up. After a few weeks, Mom stopped talking about it, but I never stopped thinking about it. It was a Saturday when it happened. Rick was supposed to be working overtime, but I woke up to his truck still in the driveway. I thought it was weird but didn't say anything. That night, while Mom was at her friend's birthday dinner, I was in Rick's office looking for batteries for my Game Boy. His door had been left open. There was a drawer I'd never seen him open before. I was curious, stupid, and bored. I pulled it. Inside were several old photo IDs. Not his name. Different names, same face. In one of them, he wore a blue shirt and black slacks. A patch on the chest read Fairgrove Transport. I felt my throat close. Under the IDs were papers, maps mostly, school zones, bus routes, a printed schedule for bus 17. My route. My name was circled. I slammed the drawer shut and ran to my room. I didn't sleep that night. When Mom got home, I told her everything. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She just quietly walked to her room, closed the door, and didn't come out until morning. I think part of her had always suspected something wasn't right with Rick, but this was too much. By Monday, Rick was gone. He left a note saying he was moving up north for work. Never came back. Police were called again. The drawer was empty by then. The IDs were gone. So was his work laptop. They filed a missing person report, but no one really looked for him. He hadn't committed a crime they could prove. He was just a man who vanished. I'm 25 years old. I still live in Michigan in a different town far from Fairgrove. I changed my name after college and cut off everyone who ever knew Rick. I don't take buses. Sometimes I wonder if it was really him behind the wheel that morning. The build, the voice, the strange calm, it all makes sense now. But I can never be sure. Was he trying to scare us? To punish Mom? Or was he going to take me away and make sure I never came back? What I do know is this. If Mom hadn't overslept, If I had been ready at 6:55 sharp, if I had walked out that door, I would have gotten on that bus, and I wouldn't be writing this now. I was 6 years old the night everything changed. We lived in a rundown apartment complex on the far edge of Bay Ridge, a place most people tried to drive past with their windows up and doors locked. The walls were thin, the neighbors fought often, and our third-floor unit always smelled faintly like mold and old cigarettes. My mother, Tanya, wasn't a bad person. At least I didn't think so at the time. But she was lost in a world I couldn't understand as a child. She moved through life like a sleepwalker, always chasing something, always restless. Some days she would sleep until sunset. Other days, she'd blast music, dance in the living room, and swear she'd turn everything around. She was an addict. I didn't know what that meant back then. All I knew was that sometimes she was full of energy, talking fast, pacing in circles, scratching her arms until they bled. Other times, she'd lock herself in the bathroom for hours and I'd sit outside the door waiting for her, not knowing if she'd ever come out. And then came Rick. He wasn't my real dad. My father had left when I was a baby and I had no memory of him. But Rick, he came into our lives like a wrecking ball wrapped in charm. He wore cologne that gave me headaches and always had a gold chain resting on his chest like he was trying to prove something. He drove a loud black truck and gave me candy the first time he met me. "I'm your new dad now," he said, half laughing, winking at my mom. She giggled, covering her mouth, and I stared at him, unsure whether to smile or run. It started with a late-night ride. I was in my pajamas, a faded yellow SpongeBob shirt and cotton shorts curled up on the couch when my mom shook me awake. "Come on, baby," she said softly, brushing my hair out of my eyes. "We gotta go somewhere real quick. Just a short ride, okay?" I rubbed my eyes and sat up. "Where?" She looked nervous. Her hands were trembling, and her makeup was smeared like she'd been crying or rubbing her face too much. "I just need to meet someone. You can sleep in the car. I won't be long." Rick was waiting downstairs. I didn't like the way he looked at me sometimes, like I was an obstacle in his way. We got in the truck, me in the back, no booster seat or seatbelt, and they started driving. The streets were quiet, bathed in yellow from the streetlights. I watched the buildings pass by through the dirty window, my breath fogging up the glass. I didn't even realize I had fallen asleep until the truck stopped. The nightmare began with a door slam. I jolted awake. My mom was gone. The driver's door was wide open. She hadn't said a word, just left me. I sat up, confused and scared. We were parked outside a house I didn't recognize, in a neighborhood even worse than ours. Broken porch lights, boarded windows, trash on the lawns. I looked around the truck, heart pounding. It was dead silent outside. And then, without warning, my door flung open. A man, grimy, wild-eyed, with a tangled beard and breath that stank like rotten meat, grabbed me hard by the arm and yanked me out. I screamed. "Shut up," he snarled, tightening his grip. "You scream again and I'll snap your neck, you hear me?" I stopped. Just like that. His voice had sliced through my panic like a knife. My knees went weak, but I kept walking as he dragged me away from the truck down the block. I looked back at the house, where my mom was, but no one came out. No one even looked. The man didn't say much as we walked. He muttered to himself, scratched his neck obsessively. I stumbled once on the cracked sidewalk, and he yanked me hard enough to dislocate my shoulder. I'm almost sure of it. The pain was blinding. "Keep moving," he growled. We ended up in a housing project, the kind of place where kids weren't supposed to play outside. Cement buildings, broken stairs, graffiti, piss-stained hallways. It smelled like despair. He pulled me up one flight, then another. I was limping now, crying, but quietly. I didn't want to make him angry again. That's when I saw someone else. A man, standing against the wall, smoking a cigarette. His hoodie was pulled low and his eyes locked on us as we passed. "You good, man?" he asked the bearded man. "Mind your damn business," my kidnapper snapped. The cigarette guy took one long drag, and then, without warning, he attacked. It was brutal, fast. The cigarette guy lunged, hitting the bearded man so hard he dropped to the floor. He didn't stop there. He kicked him, stomped him, over and over until I heard a crack. Then he grabbed him by the back of the neck and threw him down the stairs. I screamed. Blood splattered on the wall. I thought I was next. The cigarette guy paced back and forth, muttering, "Shit, shit, shit." I backed against the wall, shaking. Then he turned to me, eyes wide. "You hurt?" I nodded. He clenched his jaw. Okay. "Look, kid, you need to shut up now. Just stop crying." I did, because I believed he had just saved my life. He walked me out of the building, sticking to shadows. Every time he heard sirens, he tensed up. "You know where you live?" he asked. I shook my head. "Where was your mom?" I pointed vaguely down the street. I didn't know the house number. I didn't even know what color it was. He swore under his breath. Jesus Christ. He knelt beside me, tried to look calm. "You're gonna tell the cops I kidnapped you?" I blinked. "No. You better not," he said. "I just helped your ass." Then he looked around, agitated. "They're probably out looking for you. Cops don't like me. I can't get caught with you." I didn't know what that meant. I just wanted to go home. "I'll take you back, but you never saw me, got it?" I nodded. "Promise." "I promise." He started walking fast. I limped behind him, my legs screaming with each step. "Jesus, you're slow," he muttered, then picked me up in his arms. It was awkward, like he hadn't held a kid in years. We darted through backyards, behind fences, away from streetlights. He stopped cold when he saw a cop car roll by. Set me down, told me to run. But I couldn't. He cursed again, picked me back up, and ran like hell. And then I saw her. My mom, standing near the truck, surrounded by flashing lights and uniformed officers. I sprinted toward her, my legs moving like they weren't mine. She screamed when she saw me, hugged me so tight I couldn't breathe. "What happened to you?" she cried, sobbing. "Oh my God, baby, I'm so sorry." The police tried to ask me questions, but I didn't understand them. I was in shock. I just kept crying. My mom told some story, something about me wandering off, about someone trying to mug her, about how she ran inside to call for help and I was gone. None of it made sense. I remember her pulling me aside later, whispering, "Don't tell anyone what happened. Just say you got lost. Please." I nodded, because I didn't know what else to do. A few days later, I was gone. My dad, who I barely knew, picked me up without saying much. Just hugged me hard and told me everything would be okay now. I told him the truth, everything. He went pale, and he never sent me back. He told me years later that he thinks the man who grabbed me was just some tweaked-out stranger who saw a child alone and took his chance. That Rick and my mom probably left me in the car while they were inside buying drugs. That the cigarette guy might have been a gang member or a criminal himself. But he saved me. And I believe it. Now, as an adult, I live with the aftermath. I still don't sleep well. I still hate parking lots at night. I still flinch when I hear yelling in the street. I still cry when I see a kid alone. I never forgave my mother. She lost custody not long after that. I haven't seen her in 20 years. But sometimes, in the quiet hours of the night, I think about the man in the hallway, the one with the cigarette and the haunted eyes, the one who didn't have to help me but did, the man who may have saved my life even if no one else ever knew. And even now, I still don't know his name, but I owe him everything.